Well, hello all, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ahmed Ismail Noor. I am the programmer of the Canadian Shorts Program number 2. I am joined today by our guests, Simon Ruscinski and Mawrgan Shaw, who are the directors of the titles Premium, Pornography, and Forgotten, which are both featured in our KCFF 2022 lineup. If you have already viewed the films and are joining us, welcome. We hope you enjoyed. And if not yet, make sure to check out our digital platform and get a ticket. Okay, guys, I have prepared a few questions for you. I will start with Mawrgan in the film Forgotten. Well, Forgotten is such a poetic piece that exploits the magical capacity of animation to creatively convey the loneliness and isolation of senior people. Author and director Mawrgan Shaw is a visual artist and animator who's currently based in Toronto. My first question for you, Mawrgan, it's gonna sound a little bit technical, but I think it has a relation to the decision that which has a crucial impact on the animation workflow. What are the advantages of the classic animation technique? Why would you choose to pursue a 2D animation approach, despite the arduous process it entails, since it requires a lot of, investing a lot of efforts and time? Would you give us some information about that?
Sure. So hand-drawn 2D animation is the style I love. For me, it conveys so much because, as you said, it is so much work. Forgotten is on 2s, so it's 12 frames per second. So I think the film, the 3-minute piece, has approximately 1,000 individual drawings. And I think working with that process, honestly, it really helps reinforce the topic as well. Like Forgotten being about isolation and about reflecting and being sort of trapped in this situation that is painful and slow. That style of animation, not saying it's always painful and slow, it's obviously very creative and enjoyable, but I wanted people to feel reinforce not only the topic, but also through the art style and the direction.
And did you do all the work by yourself, or did you have like a crew that were helping you?
No, all by myself. I have a background, I have a master's in film, so I have worked in groups and I do have a lot of knowledge in that area, but in terms of animating, it's something I do all myself. So the story was conceived by me, everything was drawn, all the editing was just the sound design and music that I brought in someone else for.
Yeah, I noticed that actually in the credits. I'm also curious to know, how long did it take you to complete the film all by yourself?
So I think pre-production was probably 2 months, like coming up with the story and planning and interviewing. I conducted a lot of interviews with friends and family here in Canada and also in Australia. I've been living in Canada for many years now, but I obviously still have connections in Australia. And I conducted a lot of interviews to get people's thoughts on loneliness and on their experience, especially in nursing homes and living alone. And then production was approximately 3 months of drawing, and then post was maybe 1 more month. So about 6 months all up.
Wow, it's a lot of time, but the result really pays off. I'll get back to you, Mawrgan, and I move now to Simon. Premium Pornography is a pseudo-documentary film that incorporates archive, home video, and live action footages into a cinematic blend that penetrates into the adolescents' minds and tries to address many questions about the sexual behaviors, not only in humans and animals, but also in aliens, right? It blurs the lines between the real and the fantastical and provides a room for imagination and reconsideration of the prevailing thoughts. My first question to you, Simon, will be about the emergence of the idea. what inspired this story? I know it's a pure work of fiction, but I'm curious to know whether it has any roots in the real.
Yeah, that's a good question. It kind of came to me. I remember one day I was standing on an escalator, and I was wondering how snakes masturbate. I didn't understand. I wanted to know like if they did, because like they don't have arms, like they're just like, they're just long little stringy things. So I was just wondering like what they do for pleasure, like, and I was thinking like, yeah. And then I, did a bunch of research. All good. And I did a bunch of research and just started learning about all these different animals and what they do, and when they need to do their business. And yeah, I just like kind of like fell down this path of, I thought there might be something here. And obviously it grew out and became, a real story. But kind of the real elements in it is, I think, specifically because the movie really very focuses on a young man who's struggling with his sexuality in like a Catholic environment. He is kicked out of school for being caught masturbating in class. And a lot of it has to do with like a confusing thing in male relationships, I think, at that age specifically, where you might have your best friend in the world and they're the only one you feel comfortable with, and they happen to be a guy. So it's like, am I gay? Am I like, it's just a confusing time where, you're beginning to question things. And specifically in a Catholic environment, there's a lot of taboo surrounding that specifically. So yeah, that's kind of where it stems from, those questions.
And is it your first? I know that it's the world premiere of the film, which is really great. Yeah, we're happy to present it to our audience as a world premiere. Is it your first film?
No, I've had a few little films. Like I was in film school for 4 years, and I came up with a few little films, and still practicing. But yeah, it's probably, I don't know. I'd consider it like my fifth, like real-ish short film. Yeah, like yeah. If anyone's listening to this, check out my Vimeo.
Sure.
You'll have some things to watch.
Okay, so I have another question before I move back to Mawrgan. It's about the structure. Your film is told entirely through the protagonist's voiceover.
Yeah.
There's almost no conventional dialogue between any characters. Why did you choose this structure for the narrative?
I think it just works best as like a lot of my stuff has been, I find myself gravitating to like the form of like a diary in a way. And for this, like the framing device is he's making a movie for a class project, or like he's making it to pitch to the school board that like, hey, I'm mentally okay enough to come back to school. Please let me come back. So it makes sense in my head. Like, yeah, he would be making this, he wouldn't have a big budget. He'd just be running around with his camera and his friends, and he would have to do the voiceover himself and like tell his own story. But I also just love voiceover. I love it. It's one of my favorite things. And yeah, I thought that would be like the most effective way to tell the story. Like he tells, it's kind of like an essay as well. So he says, this is my situation. Here are all the animals I've learned about. And then it kind of, devolves.
It's also it has the form of a paper as well, not only a film, but
yes.
It's a film and a paper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any like mobile phone footages were used?
I think all of it is, I'm pretty sure at least, I think all of it was just high 8, like my dad's old camcorder, just trying to make that work. And I do a thing where I just like, I'd never buy new tapes. I'm just taping over all of like my family home videos and stuff. So sometimes I'll be editing and I'll have a clip, and then I'll see like little me from like, 20 years ago pop up and say, oh, hello. And yeah, sometimes I leave them in just for fun, but yeah.
So most of it were shot on high 8. No.
Yeah, I think almost all of it was, if not all of it. Yeah.
Why did you choose this medium specifically?
I just love it. I love the way it looks. I've been working with it for a little while. I'm almost worried I rely on it now because I just love it so much. Like I bought a Black Magic and I never use it. I'm just always using my high angle computer. But I don't know. I love the way it looks. I think it also kind of made sense for the story in my head. Like he's a high school student. He shouldn't be shooting on like an Alexa Mini or
Yeah,
anything, you know,
yeah,
it just doesn't
yeah,
make sense. But I
yeah.
just like the way it looks, like super rough, and I can do fun things with the colors and yeah.
Fantastic. I'll go back to you, Mawrgan. As a filmmaker, and specifically in this film, what informed your formal decisions, such as the choice to use black and white, high contrast in the image, the angles that you chose, etc., etc. Were they like intuitive decisions, or were there like conscious decisions that came after careful thinking?
The black and white I chose because I wanted it to feel stark. You know, a lot of the frames are quite empty. The character sort of flickers in and out even as he's going about his day. In terms of like angles and what I chose, I just wanted every sort of moment on the screen to feel like just a little snapshot into this person's life. So I wanted sort of moments where you see them in this vast emptiness. And then I wanted moments close up that felt claustrophobic. And like there's a shot where time is passing and you see it through the shadows of a window that's crossing across the room, but it feels almost like it could be a jail cell, which is obviously sort of one of the metaphors I'm looking at. And black and white and those sort of trapped angles I thought helped reinforce that. So it was a bit of intuitive and a bit of planning. It was marrying the two.
Did you try like making it in color at a certain point and then
I didn't.
You didn't?
It's definitely something that I'd like to do in the future. I have worked with color before when drawing like traditionally, like this is 2D frame by frame, but Forgotten was drawn with a mix of digital and traditional. In traditional, I've used color. It does just add so much more time. Though, as one person, it's sort of one of those decisions you have to make at the beginning. Is this a film I'm going to make in 6 months, or is this a film I'm going to make in 2 years?
Yeah, I understand. Do you also make films that are not animation? I mean, like probably documentary or fiction films?
Fiction films I did, that was where I began. I've made a couple of short films. I made a few with a small collective in Australia called 54th Story. We focused a lot on like character narratives, a lot of like internalized concepts. But since moving to Canada 6 years ago, I got involved in the animation community here, and I just fell in love with this medium and its way of communicating. And it just has so much freedom that I couldn't experience before. And throughout the pandemic, it became a lifesaver because animation is something that I could do. I could do every step of the process. I didn't need a huge crew, which I couldn't have been around anyway. So in a lot of ways, it's been really great to explore that. And I'm really excited to keep going.
Okay, cool. I have one more question for you. It's going to be my last question. Is about more about the content. What do you think we can do to support the elderly? I think in terms of loneliness and isolation, what do you think we should do to support them?
I think we need to listen to what people are saying more. Particularly over the pandemic, elderly people reported like higher experiences, higher feelings of isolation and of like essentially a loss of agency. And a lot of people that were suffering from things like dementia or Alzheimer's, those aspects of those diseases actually sped up like astronomically through the lack of social contact. Like we as people are such social creatures that when you take that away, a lot of the other passion we have for life is really negatively impacted. I think we just need to listen to elderly people about what they need. And ultimately, a lot of the time, it just comes down to connection. That's all.
Yeah. Move back to you, Simon. And my last question for you would be about your audience. Were you targeting specific groups of audience when you were working on the film? And what would be the ideal feelings that you were hoping to like infuse in your audience?
Yeah, I try to work from a place where I just make myself laugh. And if I am really interested in something, I just really try to investigate that and hope others will hopefully feel the same way. You know, if I'm really into something, I'm sure there are other people who are, you know, wired in the same way. But ideally, you know, I'd like to show it to, you know, younger kids who are maybe struggling with the similar issues that the protagonist in the movie is, you know, and like obviously there's a lot of taboo and, you know, secrecy around certain subjects, but really it's all silly. You can just have fun and, you know, talk about these things more openly. And in terms of the feeling, I like to just really mix comedy with almost, I consider it horror in a weird way, where it's just because at the end of the movie, he's seeing his future and he's imagining this world that doesn't exist. And I find it kind of horrifying, but also funny because he just keeps going and going and going and putting himself down the rabbit hole that he, you know, he just keeps digging. But yeah, basically that. And I hope, you know, I'd like everyone to see the movie. I think it's for everyone.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
What about the title? Well, I'm curious to know what was the like the feedback of your crew when you first introduced the title to them.
Yeah, the crew is very small. It was basically just my girlfriend and my brother, and my brother was cool with it. He thought it was a good idea. My girlfriend was a little less, she was like, people might not want to type this in on Google if they're searching for it. But I thought it was funny. I thought it worked. I thought maybe it'd, you know, catch people's, you know, attention. So I think it works.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Mawrgan and Simon, for this interview. Thank you for your time, and thank you for making such beautiful films. Now, thank you for our audience for joining. Yeah, thank you for joining us. The Kingston Canadian Film Festival runs from March 3rd to the 13th, 2022. Check out other videos in our series to hear from other fantastic Canadian filmmakers and talents. Thank you.
Thank you.